This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
Persephone and Cassandra, Atlas and Prometheus, oligarchy, plutocracy, satire, irony, hubris, nemesis, pathos, catharsis, sour grapes and blowing hot and cold, opening Pandora's box and leaving no stone unturned, the myths, tales and concepts of ancient Greece echo and reach into every aspect of modern life. Often misunderstood, frequently romanticized, and sometimes deliberately twisted. To understand their origins and truth is to get a real glimpse into the universal themes that connect us to the past and to each other. This is their story.
Άμα θέλεις μάνα, δίρε με, άμα θέλεις μάνα, δίρε με, πάλι εγώ θα βγαίνω στην αυλή για να βλέπω τον Αλεξανδρή.
Welcome to Podyssey. I'm Alex Andreou. Each time we take one myth, one concept, person, place, theme from ancient Greece, take it apart, figure out its inner workings, trace its tentacles, juice it for wisdom, update, reconfigure and put it back together all shiny and new. We just had a live Zoom session on Sisyphus and the story time of Arachne. With each Q&A, they just get better. More people engaging, making them real conversations, if not group therapy sessions. On this one, we discussed everything from Happy Death Day and Cinderella to Burnout, and whether, as Simone de Beauvoir asserts, few tasks are more like the torture of Sisyphus than housework. With its endless repetition, the clean becomes soiled, the soiled is made clean, over and over, day after day. The battle against dust and dirt is never won. Now, it has become rather a tradition to itemize all the ways in which the myth has come alive for me in the time since recording it. The words with which each episode begins are not just my sales pitch for this podcast. The myths and concepts of ancient Greece really do reach into the now. The National Theatre just announced an upcoming production of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, which made me think, of course, Willy Loman is Sisyphus. Once in my life I would like to own something outright before it's broken, he says. I'm always in a race with a junkyard. I just finished paying for the car and it's on its last legs. They time those things, they time them so when you finally paid for them, they're used up. Work a lifetime to pay off a house, you finally own it and there's nobody to live in it. But there was so much more. What Sisyphus can teach us about psychiatric drug development, mused a medical journal. Former Nepalese Prime Minister Baburam Bhattarai posted on X about India and Nepal, I quote, reliving this Sisyphus story for decades. And the brilliant Jack Loftus used this myth as a framing device to ridicule the 30-odd time that President Trump had claimed a deal with Iran was 95% done. After several thousand years of constructive engagement with a boulder and every muscle in my posterior, he wrote, I am pleased to report we are 95% of the way up the tenacious little hill here in Tartarus. Honestly, folks, we are so close. The summit is largely visible. It is nearly visible. There is a concept of visibility at play here that is impossible to ignore. Now, we were going to be joined by psychotherapist Dr. Ruth Smith, but her health did not allow her the stamina that an evening meeting demands. Dr. Amanda Potter kindly stepped in to help. I do know one thing that Ruth intended to discuss, however, the Sisyphean goals that we set for ourselves and why we do it. Specifically, she wanted to touch on conditions of worth, and since we did discuss it, partly to include her in this and partly as a loving get-well card, I shall let the good doctor herself explain.
Something that has also really struck me is the idea of how, as individuals, we are constantly engaged in our own Sisyphean task. And one of the ways in which we experience that is with our conditions of worth. So these are the explicit and implicit rules, expectations, and standards that we learn as very small children we need to exhibit in order to receive acceptance and love. So it might be that in my family as a small child, I learned that I had to be the funny one or the clever one or the kind one, and therefore I will act out that role in order to be loved. And we arguably all do this as children, and then that affects our character development as we grow. And what's really interesting is, as a therapist, is seeing people identify and then dismantle those conditions of worth and say, hold on a minute, I don't have to be the funny one all the time or the clever one or the kind one. Who am I in relation to myself versus who do I think I need to be in order to receive love? And the reason I see this as a Sisyphean task is because we can spend our whole lifetimes doing this. It can take years to identify and unpack our conditions of worth, to become who we truly are and not think who others want us to be. We can get to the top of the mountain of a realization of, oh, this is who I really am. And then we can return to our family at Christmas time and immediately slip back into our role within the family, and we're right down at the bottom of the hill again.
If you want to receive the illustrated guide to each episode, and they are wonderful, and be a part of the next live session on the myth of Alcestis, who offered herself to death in exchange for saving her idiot husband, and the story time of Erigone, the filthiest Podyssey tale yet, then sign up now as a monthly supporter at ko-fi.com/Podyssey from just $5 a month. And now here are the highlights of that live Q&A on Sisyphus and Arachne. Enjoy. Hello, lovely people. We'll give everyone another few minutes because there's still people coming in. It's rude to start before 5 past, I think. I mean, my Greek instinct is to show up at 1/2 past. And whenever I go to Greece and we arrange a time to meet somewhere, I get there and people are still at home. They're literally still in the bath, going, yeah, we're coming. Timekeeping is very different over there.
And before we start, Alex, just to say, you did this whole thing about burnout, and I just want you to know your content is worth waiting for. Do not push yourself to the point of killing yourself. It's so not worth it, because your content is more, brilliant. And
can I just say,
take your time.
I am incredibly grateful to all of you for being so patient with me. But the pushing for me to get the episode out is not about the delay. It's not about keeping you waiting. It's about me not knowing when enough is enough. So the exercise is not at all you putting pressure on me or me somehow feeling that you will punish me if the episode is a week late. The pressure is the pressure I put on myself, because I could spend the next year moving words around from here to there and still not be completely happy with the result. And that's my baggage, and that's my lesson from this exercise, and I'm trying to learn it, and I'm trying to deal with it. Right, so let's get started. There she is. Hello, Amanda. Amanda is here. Thank you, Amanda. We appreciate you very especially for showing up today, because otherwise I was going to be on my lonesome. And I do feel that Amanda came up with the two best references ever on the show, especially Scrat from Ice Age, I thought was quite inspired. But also Prisoner. I mean, Prisoner really is Sisyphus, and I had never, ever seen it and would probably never have seen it. Like I said, I've got loads of questions already that have come in over email and Blue Sky. I will prioritize the people who came here. If you have one that you are ready to ask right now, remember you can ask anything you want on Arachne as well, the spider, the weaver, the first spider, or Sisyphus, or anything else that takes your fancy for that matter. So if anyone wants to speak, just put your hand up or just unmute and start talking. We don't stand on ceremony. So welcome and thank you. Is housework a Sisyphean task? Which I thought was quite interesting, because there are the people who think making your bed is pointless because you're only going to get in your bed that evening anyway. So it's a never-ending thing. But there are those who believe that that kind of tidiness is part of a routine that sets you on the right course for the day. Can I have a show of hands? Who is a very regular bed maker? Almost everyone. We have one wavy sometimes. And do you think that things that need to be done every day qualify for Sisyphean? I'm not entirely sure, because I think they perform a function. It's just you have to do them regularly. So you're not rolling the same rock up the same bit of hill. It's sort of a different rock every day when you do the washing up, or, when you do the ironing or whatever. But there are tasks, there are housework tasks that are pointless, and therefore maybe they are Sisyphean. For example, ironing your socks like my mother used to do. The laughter of recognition I feel there. What do you think, Amanda? Housework.
So I'm not a great lover of housework tasks, and actually I tend to listen to something while I'm doing them. And so, but there is this idea about mindfulness and the repetitive task actually being a good thing for you to get your head into a different space. And I was wondering about that with Sisyphus and his rock, even, that could that be a task when he was thinking of something else? And I suppose I've been thinking about this because somebody got me this little book of everyday mindfulness, and I was with someone at work and randomly turned over to a page, and actually it was housework, and it was saying, don't try and avoid the housework, be mindful while you're doing it. And I felt not very happy about that. But I think that some people find those kind of repetitive tasks useful to just get your head in a different space, I suppose.
And did you try it? Did it work for you?
No, I housework. I didn't. I think he maybe tried it. I avoided it.
I think it depends on the task, actually. Certain housework tasks I'm happy to putter along, but if something is like, for example, washing dishes, I hate that with a passion of 1,000 burning suns, so no. Not very mindful then.
Okay, so what's your favorite? What is the house task that you will happily take?
I think vacuuming, actually.
Yeah, vacuuming can be quite satisfying because you're seeing the progress, I think. I think that's what makes it better.
I like Sally's, though. I like the weeding. I get the weeding, I think, Sally. I tend to agree that that's quite a nice mindful task, isn't it?
Yeah.
The weeds will always come back, but not exactly the same weed in the same place, I suppose.
Yeah, and there's something about getting your hands in the muck. I think that's quite therapeutic. And it was interesting just how many messages I got completely independently, including with photos, where people were listening to the Sisyphus episode while doing gardening things. And there was someone in particular that was sort of removing rocks from a raised bed, which I thought was just perfect, really. There is something else that I want to share with you, because it was an interesting aspect of this episode. I wanted, as an experiment, to see what sort of story a large language model would generate for this. And so I used one of the freebie goes on ChatGPT, gave it very specific instructions about the notion of Sisyphus as a sort of tech entrepreneur, told it to put in loads of dialogue, modern references, jokes, etc., and write out the story of Sisyphus. And it generated something that it was peculiar. And I think when I put out this episode, I will read a small section of that version of the story that ChatGPT generated just at the end, so you can get an idea of it. I found it really interesting. You know what they call the uncanny valley when they talk about robotics and animation? That if an animation or a doll or whatever is too close to reality because it doesn't look fully human, but it looks almost human, it becomes quite creepy. And that's what they call the uncanny valley, that gap between the natural and the unnatural. And that's why so much animation is on purpose not naturalistic. You know, the eyes are very big and the bodies are very small. And, you know, they sort of make it cutesy and non-natural on purpose, because actually, if you go to the natural side, it looks quite weird. And that's where that script was, that ChatGPT script that was generated. It was almost trying to joke, and the jokes were almost landing, and the references were almost clever, and the similes were almost lyrical. It was trying its best to kind of mimic a human telling of the story, but it lacked warmth completely. It really was like your toaster trying to tell a knock-knock joke, ultimately. And I found it really, really interesting, actually, as an exercise, because I thought, I wonder what it'll throw up. And then I was really scared as well, right? Because I thought, what if it turns out a magnificent telling of the story? How will I not use bits of it? It will influence me, it will affect me. So it felt quite a dangerous experiment in a strange way as well. But it didn't. It generated something that was completely unusable. And I will read you a short section of it. I can't explain it. You will hear when I read a little bit of it.
Starting or growing your own business can be intimidating and lonely at times. Your to-do list may feel endless with new tasks, and lists can easily begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything as a built-in business partner can be a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Gymshark, Rare Beauty, and Heinz, to brands just getting started. Shopify has hundreds of ready-to-use templates that can help you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. And you can tackle all the important tasks in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to save multiple websites or try to figure out what platform is hosting the tool that you need. And if people haven't heard about your brand, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you, with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns to reach customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Edwina, who is a very regular but couldn't join us, she said, I do wonder whether Sisyphus might have a magic moment of ecstatic enlightenment when the boulder is just about to roll back down. as Blake might have said, kissing the joy as it flies. Is the grief worth for that moment? And strangely, that got me thinking that there's quite a lot of things that involve climbing for no reason. I mean, rock climbing, for one, there's nothing at the top for you. You just go there and come back down. But also there's loads of stuff. There's loads of park rides and bungee jumping. And, there's loads of things that involve you getting to the top of something just so you can jump down again, come down again. I mean, a slide is a classic Sisyphean task. You literally just climb the ladder just to slide back down again. So maybe there is some sort of pleasure in that up and down thing. I don't know. Simon asks, this is interesting. How different is the endless repetition of Sisyphus when viewed through pre-industrial eyes? Does it map differently when you're not looking at the repetitive nature of sort of factory work and things like that? And I think that's interesting because Debbie pointed out that it wasn't particularly during the Industrial Revolution that the myth came back. You would expect it to in that era of loads of repetitive work, etc. But it didn't. It's not what happened. It came back slightly later. And because I had been thinking about that, I actually researched it a little bit, and I found out that manual labor was a lot more repetitive and a lot more industrial revolution-like for a much longer than we imagine. So people who worked in the Lavrion mines, the slaves who worked in the Lavrion mines near Athens, the people picking fruit or gathering crops sort of 3,000 years ago, their life was not that different to someone doing repetitive work post-industrial revolution. So I don't know that the assembly line was the first ever time that humans faced a sort of repetitive thing that went on and on. Sofka, yeah.
I just wonder if there's not a big difference, though, between the torture or the work camp as the describing of pushing this great rock up and hopelessness and punishment and hell-like environment with work that may be very exhausting and awful, but you are achieving something with it. So even those poor slaves who probably didn't get anything for it themselves, but they were going to bring out silver from the mine, whichever.
No, look, I understand that, but it still actually depends on your attitude to it in a very strange way. Someone pointed out the sequence in Cool Hand Luke. I don't know if that's a film you're familiar with, where they're asked to build an impossibly long bit of railway or road, I think it is, in a time when they can't do it. And they sort of get their head down and do it just to upset the overseer. And so they kind of decide that even though they're being forced to do this thing, they're going to do it and do it well and do it fast. And that means they own it. They sort of take control of it. It's not being imposed on them any longer. I think that's quite an interesting concept, actually. The idea that even drudgery becomes less punishing if you kind of take ownership of it and decide you're going to do it the best anyone has ever done it. And there is something to that appeals to me, as you might have gathered from the episode. If I ended up in a factory, I think in an assembly line, I would want to be the best assembly line worker in that factory. There's no doubt about it. I would feel that I was letting everyone down if I weren't. I don't know if anyone's gone to see the opening sequence of Modern Times with Charlie Chaplin. It really is an extraordinary sequence where, he's sort of bolting something onto another component that's just passing by. And someone pulls the lever too much and it starts going really fast. So he starts going faster and faster and he still can't keep up with it. So he starts moving down at speed with the line and bolting the thing and ends up being swallowed by the line and ends up in the cogs of the big machine and then being spat out the other side. And that's such a perfect illustration of exactly what it says on the tin, modern times. How that thing that you feel you can't keep up with just swallows you up and spits you out the other end. Then there was Simon. This is also really lovely, I think. He says, the episode ends with a hopeful exhortation to keep doing what we love, which made him grin massively at a stranger passing by, apparently, who thought he was being weird. But he said every success takes time away from us and effort away from us until we inevitably run out of time. To your point, Daniel, that the bleak interpretation of this thing, that every little task, every little effort eats away at the time we have. And this is, I think, where I part way with the existentialists. And I think Debbie was kind of in the same ballpark. She's not a big fan, because they see us as completely isolated units. And I think that's where the Sisyphus myth, the modern interpretations of the Sisyphus myth fall down a little bit, because there is another version of events where you are part of a generational passing of the baton. You are part of a society, you're part of a group, and you don't have to get the rock all the way up the hill. You just need to get it a little bit of the way up, and then someone else takes over. And if you look at that, if you look at achievement as a thing that extends over many people and over a longer time, then actually it becomes okay. You accept the finite quality of your own time because you're not aiming for this thing to be yours. You're not aiming for legacy. You're not saying, I'm the person that will run the 1 minute mile. You're just saying, I just need to get from A to B, and then someone else will take over when I'm old and tired or dead. Who wants to ask something? Come on, I want to hear your voices. Hi, Sally. Unmute yourself and go for it.
It's more to carry on your conversation.
Yeah.
I was talking with my sister yesterday. She works for a charity. She spends her time overlaying process and routine on existing developmental charity work to protect vulnerable people and women, particularly from trafficking. Great job. But one of the things that you have there is this Sisyphean task. It's never finished.
Ends.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And she said, don't you know the starfish story? So I don't know how many people do.
I don't.
There's a seashore, and on the beach, there are loads of starfish that are stranded and beached up, and they will die. And there's way too many of them. And the little lad is going along and he picks up the starfish and he chucks it in. And somebody asks him, why do you bother? You know, there is so many, you'll never save them all. And he went, well, I made a difference to that one, didn't I? As he picks it up and chucks it.
Yeah.
So Sisyphean tasks can sometimes be reduced down to I'm making a difference to this one thing, this one relationship, this one action changes the game for that one thing. And that pleases my mind, if you like. People matter. So if you make the difference, if you're dealing with people.
Sally, it's everything. Everything is like that. The question we get most often in the other project, Quiet Riot, is how can we turn this thing around? It just seems huge. How can we convince this 25% of people to vote a different way or whatever? And the moment you look at it like that, like a massive block, it becomes Sisyphean. The moment you break it down, you say, well, how about you turn around one person that you know at work or in your family?
Yeah.
If we all do that, we're okay. The moment you do that, the moment you make it individual and break it down into smaller things, it becomes very doable. And maybe that is what is in Sisyphus' mind as he's rolling the rock. Maybe in Sisyphus' mind, it's not the top. It's just the next 10 meters.
The thing I love about your voting analogy is actually every one person that you change the mind of is actually two, because it's taking one away from the wrong place and putting one in. So it's like double the joy.
Yeah, it's like playing a team that's also in the relegation zone. Sigita, you've got your hand up.
What this episode actually got me thinking about the so-called Sisyphean tasks, and also slightly relates to housework, this one. It got me thinking about Cinderella, actually.
Yeah.
Because, I think it's Brothers Grimm version that her stepmother gives her the impossible tasks of sorting out, I think, poppy seeds from sand or something like that.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
remember exactly, and everyone else then leaves for the party in the king's palace, etc. But then, obviously, the fairy godmother shows up and sorts this out by magic. Considering that Sisyphus was punished by gods, did he also expect that maybe not all of them would be of the same opinion, and maybe someone eventually will help him?
Maybe, and that certainly happens in a lot of myths. They use the human at the center of a story as a sort of pawn to express some other rivalry that they have going on. So maybe that is... There's a lot of Sisyphean tasks in fairy tales, actually. It's very common for the hero or heroine to be given a thing that they couldn't possibly complete. And then it's completely because they get magical help, basically. And that's how the story is resolved. So there is a sort of deus ex machina kind of deal going on. I'll tell you something else that someone pointed out. So, the Pleiades, his wife, Merope, is one of the Pleiades, and she's one of the stars in the sky, etc. Someone said to me that there is Jewish folklore about the Pleiades, and it is about a fallen angel called Shemhazal, who falls to earth and falls in love with a woman called Istehar, who is Ishtar, basically. And she swears she will give herself to him if he tells her the way to heaven, if he tells her how to ascend to heaven. But when he tells her how she can get to heaven, she leaves him and gets to heaven. She abandons him. And so she becomes one of the constellation of the Pleiades, but she's the least bright one because she got there by deceit, if that makes sense. And I thought that was quite a lovely retelling of it. Who wants to ask another question?
The thing that's going through my mind is the difference between a task that you're doing on your own and your task you're doing as a member of a team. Because some of what you've been saying, like slaves working together, although it might be an awful task, if you're actually part of a community or a team of some sort, that makes things achievable. That if you were left on your own, even doing your housework, if you've got someone else to do it with, it becomes achievable.
I think that's such a lovely thought, James, because actually I think that was in my head in choosing the final song for the episode, which was Old Man River from Showboat. Because that work song, that tradition of the work song that you do while you're working, there is something to that. There is also almost an expression of defiance in it as well, that not only am I doing this thing that I'm forced to do, but I'm going to sing while I'm doing it. I'm going to keep my spirits up. It has always felt to me that there is something in spirituals that is also kind of a snub and a bit of a two fingers to the boss, that not only am I going to do this work, I'm going to sing while I'm doing it.
When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses.
If data management is slowing down your business, you need the Intuit ERP. If one entity is here, and one here, and one here, and one here, you need the Intuit ERP. If scaling your business feels like starting over, you need the Intuit ERP. Intuit Enterprise Suite is the AI-native ERP solution that consolidates, migrates, and automates, all in one place. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
What do you think, Amanda? Because you work in that area, don't you? I mean, in a strange way, that crosses over to your professional life, because you do a little bit of team building and sort of how to manage
yes,
teams
I
and
do.
things like that.
Yeah. So it does feel to me Sisyphus is a man on his own with a task on his own. And we've talked about it might have thought that somebody might come and help him one day or whatever is going through his mind. But it does feel to me that it is a repetitive task and it's torture because he's on his own. And as a team, we make the task lighter, don't we? And so the idea of all the songs that people were singing, slave songs, it's a sense of camaraderie against or resistance to the task, but also that you're in it together. So it's both things at the same time. I think it's resistance and acceptance.
Yeah,
personally.
I think you're right. I think, which means that I think James's point is ultimately right as well, because the Sisyphus's isolation is part of his punishment. It is part of his punishment that he's got this thing to do on his own and he must do it on his own. Are you ready to go now, Daniel, or shall I take one that's been sent in?
I'm just thinking about before his punishment, all of the kind of the story of what led up to it, all the things that he was doing. Do you think he was hard done by? Because it felt like he was punished in a way that they didn't know what else to do with him.
We've talked a bit about this, haven't we, Alex? And the punishment and the task. Is the punishment worse, though? Well, Daniel, ask you this. Is the punishment too harsh because of what he did as his crime? And we might think of it differently than if we were a Greek god, I guess. But it feels like to have a punishment forever and ever, whatever that might be. When we talked about Prometheus, the same thing. Is the punishment fitting for the crime of trying to cheat death?
I think if it's truly endless, then it's out of proportion. But then I think it's complicated towards the end of the episode where we're starting to question whether he viewed it as a punishment, whether he kind of got some kind of pleasure from what he was doing or some kind of validation in his own mind.
You see, I'm genuinely in two minds about whether he's magically forced to push, whether he's magically compelled to do this thing. I think the punishment the gods give him is an unsolvable puzzle because they understand him. They know that he won't be able to let go. It is him that is doing it. It's not the gods. That's just my gut feeling from having read everything, is that they give him this puzzle that he can't solve because they know he will go on forever trying to solve it. And it really does feel like that's the kernel that's at the center of this story. The fact that he's given the thing he wanted, eternity, and he wastes it on this thing because, he's a man and he's got legacy and he always beats the odds, and so he's got to do it. Did any of you know that so many sources have Sisyphus as the biological father of Odysseus? It was a complete surprise to me. I didn't know that. And so there is a really strange line in the Odyssey that Achilles says to Odysseus. And he says to Odysseus, I'd rather slave on the earth for another man than rule down here over all the breathless dead, which I think is quite interesting because it feels like a reference to Sisyphus. This idea of toiling because someone has told you to. And so I wonder whether there was also a very early understanding of the ethics of slavery in that myth. I wonder that as the philosophical soul was being developed, as people started thinking about ethics and morals, I wonder if they also looked at the people who they treated as chattels and did these repetitive, endless tasks that never ended and started to wonder what must their life be like. Because that also feels to me like it's somewhere in there. Yes, Sofka?
Yes, I wanted to bring in something I just thought of, which is the Richard Flanagan book, The Long Road to the Deep North, which is about the Australians and New Zealanders mostly, but also Brits who were captured by the Japanese and were treated as slaves. So they had to work in really abysmal circumstances. And so whereas we've been saying before that maybe all the camaraderie between slaves might have made it okay, actually, when people are being treated that badly and they're dying day by day, it makes it far worse. But before you answer, also, I came in late and I just want to say how much I love Podyssey and have right from the beginning, and think it's just a phenomenal achievement. And to be able to learn so much and laugh so much and hear so much wonderful music. And so I just want to be quickly a fangirl, because I think it's quite astonishing what you do.
Thank you. That's really lovely. I have had quite a lot of messages about my farmer accent, and not all of them were very kind. Do you want to add something, Amanda?
Well, I wonder if I was writing the Sisyphus story, maybe because he was such a trickster, it wasn't him that was pushing the rock up at all, and he got somebody else to do it, or swap bodies with somebody, and maybe that's really the answer.
I love that there's a kind
Maybe
of...
he cloned himself like Loki.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
I think so, yeah.
What else? Someone brought up Pratchett's Eric, which has, of course, a version of Sisyphus in it. But instead of being forced to push the boulder, Sisyphus in that version is pushed to do the health and safety paperwork that is required before he is allowed to push the boulder, because the gods have decided that that's even worse as a punishment, the endless paperwork that he needs to do. I thought that was a lovely reference. Bill on Blue Sky brought up the Shawshank Redemption. I'm not sure I totally agree, because it does involve this kind of digging with a spoon, which is a Sisyphean task. And I guess he feigns having resigned because that's his shield to keep going with it. So he pretends that he's completely given up on the idea of breaking out, because that's how he ends up managing to do it without anyone noticing. And I think that is actually something I brought up. It's the difference between hell and purgatory. It's the difference between doing something that you have no idea what the length of it is, but you know it has a length, you know it has an end, versus doing something that you know has no end. And I think that makes a kind of qualitative difference. One of my favorite horror films of the last 10 years, probably, Happy Death Day. I don't know if there are any horror fans. It's actually a lot better than it sounds, I promise you. It's basically a classic slasher film, only the day keeps repeating. Friday the 13th meets Groundhog Day, and each day she tries to do something different to avoid basically being killed, and it happens hundreds and hundreds of times until she solves it.
Okay, this isn't helping.
This is pointless, isn't it?
All right, look. The way I see it is you have unlimited amount of lives, so you have unlimited opportunities to solve your own murder.
So I'm just supposed to keep dying until I figure out who my killer is? That's your genius plan.
Do you have a better idea?
And there are a lot of films like that. There are Sisyphus vibes to films like Memento, where he keeps repeating the thing but has no memory of it. Someone mentioned Arachne and said that Arachne's punishment, when you say definitely, what do you mean? Too harsh?
Yeah, I think it was too harsh for the supposed crime she committed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, Sigita, I don't know. Are you familiar with the Cupid and Psyche story? Because that's Venus sets impossible tasks to Psyche, so it's a similar thing to the Cinderella. So I wondered if you knew that, yeah.
And also, just a side note, the Pratchett reference, when Crowley becomes king of Hell in Supernatural TV series,
yeah,
he rearranged Hell to be one endless queue.
A punishment for everyone but the British. So what else do I have? I will return to this first question. Oh my goodness. So someone says they have no conception of a sort of family tree of the gods. Eve sent that in. And they find it very confusing because they're all linked up. The reason it's confusing, Eve, I know you're listening to the recorded version that will go out, The reason it's all very confusing is because time is not linear in Greek mythology. I cannot say this enough. There are people who are people's great-grandfathers and also the same person's great-grandchild. It is cyclical. You see that a lot of times. You see a person appear in various different generations, and so it becomes very confusing. And that is because a lot of local, smaller pagan deities, maybe Middle Eastern deities, North African deities, were imported and kind of absorbed into a conveniently similar Greek hero tale or Greek Olympian god or whatever. And sometimes they don't map directly. They do not map perfectly well. So you have many versions of the same person, basically, that appear at different times. And all the genealogies disagree. You know, Hesiod has a different explanation of how exactly those people fit with each other to someone else. And so the reason it's very confusing is because it's not like a tree. So that's why it's really very, very difficult. Anyone else wants to ask a question? I have one more thing to say, but I will take a question before that. Sofka, yes.
I just wondered, it's a bit off topic, so you may not.
It doesn't matter.
But I'm very interested in the making of Podyssey. It sort of strikes me you could almost do like a David Attenborough behind the scenes. What are the waiting long hours for the lions to come out from behind the bush? Or where do you get the inspiration? Because it all comes across so perfectly put together with the music and the voices and the river burbling.
Amanda's laughing.
Well, it does. I mean, it's
because
so
she knows
brilliant.
the chaos that goes on in the background.
That's what you sometimes have admitted to. And so I'm very interested in how the project, how you do it, you know, what point do you start at and how do you bring in all the other elements?
So I think the starting point is conversations with Amanda, Debbie, Aleka, and Ruth. That is always the starting point. I have a vague idea in my head. I have like a sort of outline of things, but I think my learning style is such that I only can clarify things in conversation. I can't do it on my own at all. I'm not one of those people that can lock themselves away and write a book. You know, for me, it's only while talking to other people that things occur to me. And then inevitably too many things occur to me. But I then take it all away and kind of synthesize it. And it's part of the joy of it, actually, that Amanda, Debbie, Aleka, and Ruth don't know exactly where it's going. I take great pleasure. I take great pleasure in abusing their contributions to arrive at completely different places to the ones they thought. What do you think, Amanda? I mean, it's chaotic, yeah.
So being a newbie to season 2, it's took me a couple of goes to get through what I was thinking, what is the process? And so because Debbie and I know each other and kind of our work overlaps, but we've agreed to take up to a certain point, Debbie finishes and then I take the more modern stuff. So Alex, Debbie and I have been, as he said, having the initial conversations. And what I've really enjoyed is that I've gone away and researched the things that I'm really interested in. And some things I'll revisit and some things I'll look at anew. And then and we do a recording of various different pieces. And then Alex magicians it all together. And it all comes together well. So it's really nice for me to be able to go and research some things that I wouldn't have thought about or put in the same place.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily have thought of some of the things that we came up with, and then I've brought the connections in. So it's really interesting how it all comes together for me.
So the last thing to say is something sent to me by my sister, the archaeologist Alex Andreou, because she had seen that a lot of the comments were about the punishment, the proportionality of the punishment, actually in both Arachne and Sisyphus, especially in Sisyphus. And she sent me a thing saying, and this will be quite interesting in the next full episode. The next episode that's coming, by the way, is a story time on a figure you will have never heard of, I'm quite confident, called Erigone. And a figure that after you listen to the story, you will think, how have I never heard of this? Because it has such important plugins. You know, it's about the creation of a very famous constellation. It's about the introduction of wine to humans. It's about a lot of big stuff. And I found it incredibly surprising that I'd never heard of this tale. And it will probably be the first adult only, I think, Podyssey, the first not safe for work Podyssey, because it involves Dionysus, and I'm afraid it's an incredibly filthy tale, and there's just no way I can clean it up. Miriam's already laughing her head off. But the one after that that's coming is Alcestis, or Alceste, which is about the woman who offers to swap her life for her husband's, to go to Hades instead of her husband, but is then rescued, etc. And so this point comes into all the last 3 episodes, and it is this. Aleka said to me that the notion of punishment for a sin was one that was really vital in those early societies, because if there isn't punishment, then there is only vengeance. And that is something I hadn't really reckoned with. So she said, if someone came and killed your brother, then you had to go off and kill one of their family. And it sort of went on forever. So the idea that you could atone for your sin in some way, or that you would be punished in the next life, or that you could, commit yourself to a year of servitude, as even gods had to do. And you will see this in the next story of Alcestis, because the whole thing about Alcestis is that he ends up winning her hand, even though he's unworthy, because Apollo is his servant. Apollo has done something wrong, and as punishment, he is made to become a servant to a human for a year. And so Alex Andreou was saying that this idea that you can somehow atone for your sin, be punished for your sin, cleanse yourself of your sin, was absolutely vital, because otherwise what people did was they literally just went around killing each other endlessly. And so the notion of a judgment in the next life is actually one that preserves society. And that's why those punishments are so harsh and so eternal, because they have to give you comfort that you don't have to go and murder someone because they killed one of yours, or steal from them because they stole from yours, because the final reckoning for them will be so much worse. And I found that quite a perspective shifting bit of information. I don't know if you agree or not, but to me, it suddenly made a lot of things make sense that hadn't made sense before about the harshness of the punishment. So on that note, I shall punish you no longer, since we've been here for an hour. Thank you again very, very much for showing up, as always, and thanks especially to Amanda for filling in. And let's all send our best wishes to Ruth, who is having a really, really tough week. Bless her. I love you all lots, and you will hear this version of a conversation edited with a little bit of the ChatGPT version of the tale at the end of it. So I think it's just so interesting. I might make it a regular feature, like just sort of 3 minutes of how shit things would be if we defer everything to AI. So on that, thank you all very, very much. And thank you for continuing to support this passion project. And I will see you again in 3 weeks' time. Thank you. Bye. What a warm and open discussion. I will add a link in the show notes to that opening scene from Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, because it really is worth seeing. And I also found out since the episode aired that there is an actual Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner short called Sisyphus, in which our predatory antagonist tries to roll a big rock onto his speedy feathered nemesis. And now, without further ado, the moment you've been waiting for, the ChatGPT version of the story that it wrote according to my creative ideas. This is the ending that ChatGPT came up with after I fed it all my scripts so far and gave it precise instructions as to the concept for this particular episode. This is the final section when Sisyphus has descended to Hades for the last time and is about to receive his punishment. Zeus did not respond with words. Instead, he devised a punishment that would become, in its own strange way, legendary. The rock was enormous. It sat at the base of a hill that stretched upward. The air felt like an unfinished sentence. Sisyphus stared at it. "You want me to push this?" he said. "Yes," came the answer, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. "To the top?" "Yes." And then a pause. "It will roll back down." Sisyphus blinked. Ah. He walked around the rock, inspecting it like a contractor. "No completion bonus?" "No." "Any variation, different rocks?" "No." Sisyphus sighed. "Right," he said. "Of course." Up the hill he pushed, muscles straining, breath steady, and for a moment, just a moment, it seemed possible. Then the rock slipped. It rolled. It fell. It returned to the bottom, and that felt almost personal. Sisyphus stood there. "Wow," he said softly. "That's wow." Days blurred into something like repetition. Sisyphus pushed the rock again and again and again. At some point, no one could say when, something shifted. One day, as the rock rolled back down yet again, Sisyphus did not curse. He laughed, as if he had just understood a joke that had taken years to land. "Of course," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. He walked back down the hill. "All right," he said, "let's go again." If you were to visit him, hypothetically, of course, the underworld has a strict no-tourist policy, you might find the scene oddly peaceful. The hill, the rock, the motion. "Doesn't it bother you?" you might ask. He would glance at you, amused. "Everything bothers me," he'd say. "That's half the fun." He'd lean into the rock, muscles tightening. "You spend your life thinking the goal is to reach the top," he might continue. "Promotion, success, whatever. But the top is fleeting." He'd shrug. "Also, great workout." He'd grin. And so the king who tried to outwit death became something stranger, a man who learned to live with life, by meeting it again and again on a hillside where the joke never ended. All I can say on that is, wow, that's wow. Whether pushing that boulder is a quest for perfection or relevance or simply for a living, it made me reconsider the words of that famous aphorist, Edward Bulwer Lytton, published in 1835, but somehow perfectly describing our social media existence in 2026. He described life as a long series of uprising ridges and observed, "Wherever you take your stand, you are looked down upon by those above you and reviled by those below you. Every creature you see is a farthing Sisyphus pushing his little stone up some Lilliputian molehill. This is our world."
Afternoon's dull, morning's duller, duller the nights before. Suddenly you...
Do I fully accept that? Of course not. Being Sisyphus demands above all optimism, a certainty that the pushing is an act of resilience and rebellion by itself.
Bored by the night and the day was I, seldom gay was I.
In the end, it was a simple realization that helped me understand why this episode had reached quite so deep inside me. That Sisyphean described a sort of hallmark of success for anyone who works with creativity. From writer to musician and sculptor to fashion designer, you are only that thing as long as you keep doing that thing. No summit is ever reached, and if it is, another higher one instantly appears.
On your lips lay adventure, and lightning flashed when you smiled.
That is why Sisyphus is happy, and so many of his observers wrong, because they equate struggle with pain and endlessness with boredom. They are mistaken. For those who take pleasure in the journey, reaching the destination would be torment. Tedium awaits on top of easily reached hills. Retirement is Tartarus. To the creative and the curious, impossible summits are Elysium.
Bedeviled, yes. Bedazzled, yes. Bewildered and breathless, yes. But not bored.
We sing our song and push that boulder, and as exhausted or frustrated or desperate we might be, there's one thing we are not: bored.
Be bored.
Podyssey is an audio production for Cooler Heads, written and presented by me, Alex Andreou. For an illustrated guide and an invite to the live Q&A for each episode, sign up now at ko-fi.com/Podyssey. Creative input, sage advice and expert contributions by 4 goddesses who inexplicably continue to make time for this hapless bard: Alexandra Angelataki-Rö, Debbie Chalice, Amanda Potter and Dr. Ruth Smith. Music by Mariana Sanghita, artwork by Simona Canellu, additional research by Cosman Zakos. Alex Andreou's Podyssey is a Cooler Heads podcast.